Hello, and welcome to today's program, which is about asbestos. Asbestos is a mineral that poses little threat to humans when undisturbed, but is highly carcinogenic. That is, it leads to severe forms of cancer, mainly in the lungs, when it's released into the atmosphere and inhaled by humans. Asbestos is a cheap material that can be used to fireproof buildings, and it's for this reason that for decades it was a standard in construction material until countries began to ban it when it became apparent that the risks outweighed the benefits. Because if, for any reason, the asbestos in a building is released into the air, it would likely cause cancer in the human beings living in that building. Israel, for example, banned the use of asbestos in 2011 for health reasons. The same cannot be said of Gaza, a place which has been destroyed and built up several times in the past 20 years. It is now estimated by the United Nations that 800,000 tons of debris across the Gaza Strip may be contaminated with asbestos. Remember, asbestos is only dangerous when released into the atmosphere. Israel's bombing campaign on Gaza has been more severe than Hiroshima and Dresden combined, destroying 60% of homes and 80% of all commercial facilities. That, if anything, will release asbestos into the atmosphere. At this point, I'd like to welcome my esteemed colleague, Nora Adin Faris, to the show. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for calling me esteemed colleague. That's so nice.
You're esteemed, if anything. We're so, again, delighted and honored to have you join the team.
I
Uh,
feel the same.
I'm so happy about that. Nora, what's your reaction when you read this story? I think you and I kind of reacted in the same way, like kind of just what the fuck? So what was your initial feeling?
Well, exactly like you're saying, what the fuck is this? And I found it really, really scary because it is one of those silent killers
Yeah.
and one of those things that could have gone completely unmentioned and it could have just passed a bunch of journalists by because, we're reporting on all of the bombings and we're reporting on the casualties and the long-term effects could have just completely gone under the radar. But then my second thought was actually, these videos of people being pulled from under the rubble, and basically you have Gazans teaming up to help dig out the people that are stuck under the rubble. You have a bunch of kids being pulled out. There are so many, like endless amounts of videos of that, which is terrifying because these children are most likely buried under some type of asbestos, and that means that their lifespan will be cut so incredibly short. Basically, what we're dealing with here is 1, 2 generations of Palestinians that are just going to be extremely sick and die from cancer. It's terrifying. What was your feeling when you read this?
My feeling was similar. It was also this kind of like, yeah, this kind of like anxiety about the story just kind of passing by. We've criticized the media quite a bit on this show, but I think I think it's, there's so much to report on in this war and this like, what many legal scholars are calling a genocide, that a question of asbestos seems almost trivial. It seems like, okay, I mean, I feel like it might have been picked up by a few journalists, like in Al Jazeera, kind of like reading in between the lines of a UN report.
Mm.
Uh, it's it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying, especially considering um the numbers. So Nora, do you wanna like put this in perspective? I mean, at this point, at least 42,000 people have been killed, confirmed in Gaza. Medical journals puts the number, the medical journal, the Lancet puts the number much higher at 186,000 people dead from, directly and indirectly from the war. What kind of numbers could we expect when it comes to deaths from asbestos exposure?
So, according to the UN, United Nations, they think that 800,000 tons of debris in Gaza might be contaminated with asbestos. You have 2 million people in a very small enclave where you cannot escape from inhaling it.
If we compare it, so okay, let's make this comparison. After 9/11, there were a lot of cases of cancer that came from asbestos exposure.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think almost 3,000 people died directly from the attacks on the
Yeah.
buildings on the World Trade Center. And then in the following years, 4,343 survivors and first responders died, like additional people died in the
Mm-hmm.
coming years. And so that's almost double.
And then if you look at it from like, the numbers that we have in Gaza, if we're talking about like the double amount of people that either have died today, like confirmed cases that the media are reporting on, which would be over 50,000 people. If we're talking double amount of that, then it is at least 100,000 people that are going to die from cancer. Or if the other number that you disclosed now, which was 186,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if we're talking double that are going to die, then we're talking about, an entire generation being completely wiped out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's truly I mean it's hard to take in these numbers, especially when you're talking about 800,000 tons of debris. I don't know what that means. I know
Yeah.
it's a lot, but I don't really know what that means. But I think I saw an image in this Al Jazeera article that we're both kind of referencing that brought it a bit home to me, that made it more like human. And that was a picture, a very, very famous picture from the direct aftermath of the 9/11 attack. And that was a picture of a receptionist at the World Trade Center that had survived the attack miraculously, but was absolutely covered from head to toe in like dust,
Mm.
some in debris from the buildings. And she was kind of called in the media the Dust Lady.
Yeah,
And
Mercy Borders, exactly.
yeah, and she died of stomach cancer in 2015. So 14 years later. And she was
Yeah.
only 42 years old at the time when she died.
Mm.
So I think that like when you think about the amount of children, not not I mean not to mention, I
Mm.
mean anyone, old people, young people, women, men, uh, babies covered in debris in Gaza. We've been seeing this for the past year.
Yeah.
That kind of brings it home for me. What do you think?
Mm. No, I completely agree. I mean, that picture of the Dust Lady, also, that was the thing that kind of made it click for me, because she was a survivor. And I think that she was very public before she died about the fact that she believed that she didn't get stomach cancer for any other reason than for the fact that she was inhaling all of that dust. And in this article published by Al Jazeera, where they go into depth about how asbestos is a death sentence, the experts are saying that the only way to, like, there is, first of all, no safe exposure for this material. So you can't just breathe in a little bit and you'll be fine. But any type of inhaling of it, you will probably get very, very sick. You will probably get cancer. But then what they're also saying is that the only way to escape it is to just get into a car and drive away. And that is impossible in Gaza. You cannot do that. And especially you have a system, a help system that has completely collapsed in the strip. So people are depending on each other. So you don't have any healthcare workers or like first responders that would come in. It's civilians that have to do this. And I think many of them have been assisting in several of these cases, meaning that they most likely will die in a couple of years.
Yeah. Exactly. I think it's appropriate to mention here the fact that the UN came out or is expected, I think, to come out with a report, but the kind of the substance of it leaked that the fact that Israel has completely destroyed the health care infrastructure in Gaza constitutes a crime against humanity um,
Mm.
for many reasons. But I mean, when you consider this, this asbestos story that we're talking about now, it's even more the case. I mean, like there have been, I mean, diseases that don't exist anymore have returned to Gaza, and people, like polio, people are literally
Yeah.
starving, and now you have this asbestos, this slow killer. I've seen people compare this story to, Hiroshima
Yeah.
because for generations there. I mean, exposure to nuclear radiation also gives you cancer and all kinds of crazy diseases, and will literally give your kids the same thing, which has definitely caused extreme suffering for people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan following the US using the atomic bomb.
Mm.
So it's mind-boggling to think that the people of Gaza are going to suffer for generations to come after having been the victims of this brutal, brutal, brutal war crimes and
Mm.
accused genocide.
So actually, this makes me think about the stories that were coming out from Iraq when there were so many reports of children being born with different sets of birth defects, and it would almost always be led to some type of exposure, either that the families were living close to an American military base, or that the children's parents had been subjected to some type of radiation coming from bombs or from just generally the war.
I think this comes back to the issue of Israel not letting journalists into Gaza. So
Mm.
because we don't really know the extent of the damage, and we don't really know, no one's an investigative journalist team has not gone into Gaza and tested, like toxicity levels in the water, or tested like what bombs have been used and if they like meet requirements or whatever of international standards when it comes to like international humanitarian law or whatever. So we have no idea. And likely it's bad. I mean, judging by what how Israel has been handling this and the existential nature of from their perspective of this war.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I also keep on circling back to the fact that despite all of these reports, it is kind of becoming, I feel like the world has kind of gone so incredibly numb.
yeah.
Like this type of story, it doesn't actually have that big of an impact on the rest of the world. Like you don't have a bunch of world leaders coming out to condemn that this might be happening. It is just this complete lack of emotion. It is, I feel like politicians, especially in the West, have been so incredibly useless in this, where they just do not in any way denounce what is happening because they still want to stand with Israel regardless. You can still say that something is horrific, but I feel like that just isn't happening. Why do you think that so little leaders are not saying anything? They're not denouncing anything that Israel is doing.
Well, some leaders are, and I think it's important to remember that it's not, like the Belgian foreign ministry does say that, the Belgian government is very vocal, and it's not like Belgium has suddenly internally combusted and gone under for that reason. But it
Mm.
seems that many governments, including our government in Sweden, are like it's almost as if they think that they're gonna like explode if they touch this question.
Mm.
And I don't know why it is. I mean, this is the million-dollar question. I've been asked this so much the past year, in interviews that I've given to different people, and I don't know. I think that there is also this like point of no return that if you m take the step to criticize Israel, there is so much to criticize, and I mean, if you take the step and you're like, actually, this is an apartheid system, then you've said that you can't like walk that back.
No,
I mean.
exactly.
And that will cause enormous ruptures with, not the least, the United States, which I mean, we're entering into more of a multipolar world, but it still is the global hegemon. And especially, now that our government, for example, has joined NATO,
Mm.
now I mean, much of our foreign policy has been sort of surrendered to our new military alliance, I think.
Mm.
And I mean, for the 2 years that we were trying to get into NATO, we had to sort of appease the Americans and Turkey,
Yeah.
obviously, but that was before the war. So I don't know. On a deeper psychological level, I think that countries in Europe, rightly so, feel a shame and a guilt over the Holocaust. They
Mm.
should. They don't feel half as much as they should, I think. But they've managed quite cleverly to outsource their guilt onto Arabs who had nothing to do with the Holocaust. And I think that they've quite cleverly created this well they didn't create it, but they support a Jewish nation state where
Mm,
they can very conveniently say, well, I just sort of I defer to Israel. You know,
mm,
they have like in Swedish we say tolkningsföreträde. Like
mm.
they have like the right to it's like identity politics. Like, well, they're
Yeah.
Jewish and so they talk about Jewish stuff and I just support them because I'm an ally. You know, it's literally that. And that if anything is first of all, it's just like that's being a zombie. It's not thinking for yourself. And it's also kind of like anti-Semitic, or it's at least, essentializing Jews as being
Mm,
different and special.
mm.
If it's done in a positive manner or a negative manner, it's still, you know, claiming that they're like different and they should, let's have them have their own set of rules and we,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
support them so that they can be over there and not over here. Yeah. What do you think?
What kind of gets to me when it comes to this is that the issue of Israel Palestine has become a left and right issue in many European countries. And when we're speaking about this, it's impossible not to mention the incredible shift that has been happening over the past decade in Europe, where you have a movement of right wing politicians that have just swept over the entire continent,
Mhm.
and that there is a video of Swedish politicians being asked by a journalist, do you consider what is happening in Gaza as a genocide? And the only one saying yes, and basically looking at the journalist like, yeah, what's your point? Is the leader of the left wing party, Nooshi Dadgostar. And then all of the rest of the other ones, the other representatives, just kind of like twist and turn and try to avoid answering the question and give these
Yeah.
like, well, per definition, it has to be tried.
It's
And it
an
just
issue for
makes
the courts.
exactly. But it makes it so much more obvious that this has unfortunately become a left and right question, which, in my opinion, that would never have happened with the Russia-Ukraine conflict. That would
Mm.
never be about left and right. Like that conflict has always been about people being affected and the country being, has a right to its own sovereignty.
Sovereignty.
Sovereignty. Thank you.
Mhm.
But as soon as we are talking about Arabs and Muslims, that is just not the case.
Yeah.
They do not have that right to exist in that way without it becoming a left or right issue. And in this sense, because Europe is so far right, the Palestinians don't stand a chance.
Yeah. I think you're right, and I think it's this, like just invoking the idea of racism has become such a taboo, post woke criticism,
Mm-hmm.
Western world. But like, let's be real. It's racism. I've been following this for so long, and I've been involved in so many like um, anti-racist campaigns at different places that I've been working at, and I can't whether it's subconscious or not, that doesn't matter. I don't think like I don't think people wake up and they decide to hate Palestinians and they actively do that in their heads. I just think that people are conditioned to
Mm.
feel more with Ukrainians than they do with Arabs. I just truly believe that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's expressed in the way that the media reports about this kind of stuff.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, I remember sitting at a live desk when the Russia-Ukraine war broke out, and it was so incredibly obvious how much everybody sympathized with the Ukrainian cause, and
yeah,
also how much doubt we would place into every article regarding anything that would come from the Russian side and from Kremlin,
yeah,
about anything that they would say, whilst we did not have that against the Ukrainian officials speaking. And basically, what we're seeing now is the same type of doubt being put when we are talking about Gaza and Hamas officials speaking, but we are just basically copy pasting everything that the Israeli military is saying.
it blows my mind. I mean, especially I think Swedish television is kind of like exemplifies this a lot. I was looking through their website this morning, and again, this is nothing against individual journalists. This is a decision taken by, the higher ups in that organization. I think individual journalists at Swedish television are great. But still now, I mean, now Israel has sort of taken over like all of the villages in southern Lebanon that it wanted to.
Mm.
And it sent in large amounts of soldiers, and it's created this like military buffer zone in southern Lebanon. Is that not an invasion? Like what? Like how much more do you need? They're still saying like according to the IDF, this is a like ground
A precise operation.
yeah, yeah, a limited ground operation. And I'm
Yeah.
just, what is going on? Do you realize how little credibility you're gonna have when reporting on Russia? Like, why would anyone believe you? It's
I
ridiculous.
I don't understand, but I do find these things kind of interesting, like this comparison that we can do. And of course, like everything that is happening between Russia and Ukraine, like that is also horrible. It's not to say like that Ukrainians have it easier in any way just because they
Of
have the
course,
sympathy of
free
people.
Ukraine. Like
Yes,
has invaded Ukraine, and that's a horrible thing.
exactly. But then apply the same strategy, that same thinking into what is happening now with Lebanon and also what is happening now with Gaza. But I find these kind of voices that come from within different newsrooms very interesting. I don't know if you saw that there have been a bunch of journalists from inside CNN that have spoken to Al Jazeera about how, for the past year, they have basically had a very clear editorial line where they are just supposed to, not just, but in a lot of topics, not in any way allow for anyone to call this a genocide.
Yeah.
Critique of Israel has to kind of be like immediately shut down, and that you have news anchors becoming super, super nervous in live broadcasting because they have a guest that is critiquing Israel and they have to kind of like break them in the middle of a
Yeah.
sentence.
It's the same. I mean, I think the same dynamics are at play in Swedish media, but not as severe. But I remember, and this has been leaked, so I can say it. When I was at Swedish radio just a year ago, reporting on the aftermath of October 7, there was a directive saying that we shouldn't say the word Palestine. We should
Yeah.
say Palestinians because Palestine is not a state. And I'm like, wait. But Sweden does recognize Palestine.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like we're one of the only countries in Europe to do so. So why would we go against our own country's law? I mean, we as a country recognize Palestine. So do should we like because the rest of the world or because like the UN or something doesn't recognize Palestine, then we shouldn't either. I mean, imagine applying that to other like facets of Swedish society. Like we have very tough laws when it comes to like I don't know, like prostitution or whatever.
Yeah,
Or when it
exactly.
comes to like, you know what I mean? Like, should we just, oh well, I mean the UN says something different, so maybe we should just bypass our own norms. It's just it's really crazy. That
It
was
is.
very strange.
That was sent through an email, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
That is
It was,
insane to me.
yeah. And I'm surprised they didn't, they didn't consider that email leaking. Obviously, I
To
didn't
be
do
honest,
it.
I have been so happy about not working with like inside a Swedish newsroom
Yeah,
over the past year because I have been terrified of
yeah,
the editorial lines and the things that you would have to write under your own name and kind of have published just because
yeah.
you're working at that paper. I'm
Yeah.
really, really happy.
Yeah, I'm honestly quite grateful as well. That I'm not there either. I know so many people that are. I'm sure you do as well. I know you do as well. Many of our mutual friends are stuck in that situation, and the amount of times people just call me and text me in such like they're like, I think I might be going crazy,
Mm,
you
yeah.
know, and complete frustration.
Well, that has to kind of be the feeling, especially if you feel like you are seeing something but being gaslit into believing that that's
Yeah,
not the case.
fucking gaslighting. It's literally gaslighting.
Not Swedish public service becoming an abuser.
Literally. Oh my Lord. Okay, let's connect back to asbestos because we could go off on this topic for
Yeah.
ages, literally. Okay, so Something that crossed my mind when we were talking about asbestos is that like a lot of countries, I think we might have mentioned this, but like a lot of countries have banned the use of asbestos because it's so hazardous. And I think I saw it's like 68 countries, so definitely not even half of the countries in the world. But it was kind of a big broad mix. I thought initially, I just assumed that it would be like Western countries would ban it, and like less developed parts of the world wouldn't maybe like feel like they have the because it's such a cheap material, so they wouldn't ban it. But it's not true. I mean, it's quite a broad range of countries that have banned the use of asbestos, including Israel in 2011. So buildings built after 2011 do not contain asbestos in Israel. In Gaza, I mean, Gaza is not a country technically,
Mm.
even though Sweden recognizes it as a part of the state of Palestine. But I did not see Palestine or the state of Palestine or the Palestinian Authority or anything like that on the list of countries that banned asbestos. And to be fair, I think Gaza has had a lot of other problems to deal with. But so I just after like Googling a little bit, I couldn't find any information on like why there is asbestos in Gaza or if this has been an issue when Gaza has been rebuilt because it's been like destroyed and rebuilt so many times. And obviously this is a tenuous connection. I can't, like if anyone's listening, I'm not directly accusing this person.
It's simply a theory,
It's
but
simply a theory, or it's just I just want to bring this up in the podcast because I haven't spoken about it earlier. Um, in Egypt, there is a figure who is a notorious he's known as a leader of a large clan in northern Sinai. He's also known as a big construction tycoon. He's also known as sort of the Egyptian president Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's man in Sinai. This man's name is Ibrahim al-Urgani, and President Sisi made a deal with him a few years back in order to gain the assistance from Organi and the sort of indigenous tribes and clans in northern Sinai in the Egyptian state's fight against Islamic terrorists or Islamist terrorists or insurgents like Daesh kind of groups that exist in northern Sinai. And northern Sinai is right next to Gaza. Um, El Arish is the biggest city, and then after Arish, if you continue along the coast, north northeast bound, you get to Rafah, and that Rafah is a joint. There's a Rafah on the Egyptian border and a Rafah on the Gazan border. So that's where like Argani kind of operates. And so Sisi and Organi have like developed this interesting partnership where Organi provides security and stability in return for a lot of state concessions when it comes to construction projects, for example. And one of the more lucrative construction projects in the region is obviously the rebuilding of Gaza, which is something that, you know, you could predict is going to happen a lot. And it's such a cynical prediction, but I mean, these wars with Israel are so frequent that rebuilding Gaza is just like a given. It's going to happen, in a few
Mhm.
years. You're going to have to rebuild it. And so Organi has been given a lot of these concessions to build up Gaza. And so, I mean, I'm sure that there are old buildings in Gaza that exist, long before people knew about the hazardous nature of asbestos. But it wouldn't surprise me, knowing the nature of Egyptian corruption and understanding the relationship between Organi and Sisi and these kind of dark room dealings. It wouldn't surprise me if they just didn't really care about asbestos being used to fireproof buildings.
Mm.
So it's definitely, like Ibrahim al-Organi, if you're listening, I'm not accusing you directly. Don't sue me. Um, and I'm not accusing you, CC, either. I love Egypt. I want to go there and I want to spend time there. Please don't
I want to go there.
deport.
Jesus
It's my second home. Don't deport me. But I just want to provide this information. And if you want to read more about it, there's a wonderful Egyptian, the only free media left in Egypt, essentially called Mada Masr, and they've done a lot of reporting about Organi and his relationship to the Egyptian state. So I thought I'd put that out there.
But that is really interesting. So first of all, I had no idea about this, and I did not know about this person at all. And I think even though we're not directly saying that that is the case, that might be one of the scenarios that might unfold in front of us over the
Yeah.
coming years. And at the same time, I'm also thinking if you have a city, a place that is constantly being bombed, and you have to rebuild it back up again, knowing that it might get bombed within a couple of years again, and then you will have to rebuild it again, it is very likely that you would not actually rebuild it in the most safest,
Yeah.
most expensive way, because probably it won't last very long. And
Yeah.
like you're saying, Gaza has been rebuilt over and over and over again over the past years, and most likely it will continue to be that case. So I think that that also speaks for your theory a little bit, that
Yeah.
we kind of know that these things of like bombings in Gaza and structures being completely, demolished, that is an image that we will continue seeing and have been seeing for a very long time. So why would anybody that is being given this contract invest too much into it?
Exactly. And even if it wasn't uh bombed, I mean, even if, the situation with the Israeli siege continues in Gaza without wars, there is also the issue of return of investment of like purchasing power of Gazans living under Israeli siege. I mean, uh Gazans don't have a lot of money. Let's be real, because the economy has been destroyed by the Israeli blockade and siege. So the people who are going to move into these houses won't have the money to
Yeah,
necessarily pay high rents, or you know what I mean. So it's a matter of that as well, I think. When they rebuilt Beirut after the civil war, the build downtown Beirut looks like Paris or something. It's like high end high rises because Lebanese people have a lot of purchasing power, and especially the Lebanese diaspora. But I don't think the same. They're not going to rebuild Gaza like Dubai. They're going to
no,
rebuild it cheap housing.
yeah.
And asbestos is used in cheap housing. Um,
I
yeah,
do think that this story is one of the more terrifying ones that I have read, because it's speaking about something that is not very immediate and something that is
yeah,
happening in silence, and I'm terrified about what is going to happen once this war ends, which I hope it will be very soon. But even if it continues for a bunch of years going on, like the how this huge amount of people becoming sick, I don't know how that is going to
yeah,
what's going to happen.
yeah. Well, on that terrifying note, should we wrap it there? Is there
I
something you'd
think
like to
so.
add?
No, actually, I'm very happy and terrified.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Well, we'll have to definitely keep tabs on this story now that we've reported on it a little bit. I think we should do a follow-up episode a little longer down the line to see if there's been
Absolutely.
sort of any reported cases or something like that. We'll keep our eyes on that. Well, but for now, thank you so much, Nora Adin Faris, for joining me today.
Thank you, Edgar. Pleasure.